I just remembered that we're supposed to record a podcast.
Oh yeah. What time is it?
Well, we've been on for 40 minutes.
Okay, that's
Talking
way better than I
absolute
thought. There have been many things happening.
I feel like, yeah, you go. I don't
I
know.
feel like, yeah. Anything else?
I'll just get us started. Let's
Okay,
just
yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
hello everyone. Welcome to the But Why podcast, where we explore the human experience through a psychological lens by asking, but why? I'm Dr. Kristen.
And I'm Dr. Laura, and today we're exploring excluding women from sport to prevent broader progress.
Woo, exciting.
So exciting. We need to think of like a catchier title for that.
Yeah. That I literally
Is this
just
like your
picked out.
book chapter title?
It's like a section from the book chapter I wrote, and I was
Okay,
like, I don't
yeah.
have the capacity to edit this to sound more human right now. Oh my god. So Laura and I have already just been talking for 40 minutes, and so
Whoops.
I'm highly caffeinated and very tired
Oh,
at the same
good.
time.
I have, guess what? Oh, sorry, this
What?
is more small talk. So I have a Yorkie bar. Do you
Ooh.
get Yorkie bars?
I've seen them before, but I don't know what it is.
Do you know about what they've now removed from a Yorkie bar on the marketing?
Having no understanding of what a Yorkie bar is, no.
Oh my gosh, you're gonna love it. So they're very tasty, and it's just a chocolate bar. But back in day, they used the marketing was that they're not for girls, and there was literally a picture of like a girl figure like on a toilet, not on a toilet, but like the toilet signs. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, that with like a cross through it. So the advertisement was that Yorkies are not for girls, and that meant that I ate them all the time because I was like, "Fuck you."
What a rebel.
Exactly. So the marketing worked on me because then I ate
Yeah.
loads. But anyway, but now they have removed.
Totally anti-establishment.
They've now removed, the kind of sexist marketing that they had
Amazing.
going on, which is great.
Well, while Yorkie has removed that, a Welsh rugby team a couple days ago came out with a marketing campaign for one of their games saying, what did it say? It said something like, this one isn't for the like faint-hearted. This one isn't for the uncommitted. This one isn't for the girls. And then it, like on the photo,
No.
it's like you said, like on the door of a bathroom.
Oh my God.
And like no, like an X in front of it.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, what the hell? It's 2025. This isn't even like a historical marketing thing. It's like, what? And they were like,
Who
got
was this?
It was the Welsh. Let me just Google it real quick.
Welsh rugby, really? Are you sure?
Positive.
Oh my
Welsh
goodness.
rugby. It wasn't like Wales rugby. It was a Welsh rugby team. It wasn't like
Welsh rugby team.
Yeah, it
Okay.
wasn't Team Wales.
Oh my goodness. How
was
could
it?
you get that so wrong?
It was for a derby match. So for anyone in America, a derby match is like against your like local rivals.
It's a battle to the death.
It's a battle to the death, and that's not for the girls. It's only for the
Not
boys.
for the girls.
It was here. Look. Oh wait. Why isn't it showing the whole thing? Oh, I don't have. I'm not subscribed to the Telegraph, but it's it's Neath RFC NEATH images. Look at
Not for girls post.
not for girls in pink.
Is that what it says?
Yeah,
I'm
it's
gonna
fucking
wait. I
dumb.
think I found images. Goodness.
How bad is that? And after they got
like-
called out for it online, because obviously they're going to get called out for it online, they were like, see, this is what we were trying to do, is highlight inequality of women in rugby. We're like, what?
What the fuck? Like,
I
come
know.
on.
It's so bad. Like,
Oh, that
I guess this
is
fits in really well with our topic of the day.
insane. It does. Look at that. Look at that segue we did.
Look at us
Isn't that good?
I think like one of the reasons we wanted to do this episode is because we had Jen and Amy Jen and Amy on, like in a episode, what, 2 episodes ago? 3 episodes ago, something like that. And
Something like that.
some who knows? Wait, I don't even know when I am right
Where
now.
are we?
And some of the comments we got from men about some of the videos were just so ridiculous and just told me how far we still have to go with women in sport. It's just, I'll read off some of the comments. But I thought first it might be useful to the main video that got the most bad comments. And I get really overprotective over my friends, people that we're going to bring on to the media side of it. I know Jen and Amy are constantly on social media and they do podcasts and they've got a lot. So they're, and like that's more on the like LinkedIn and podcast and professional links kind of side and not on the TikTok side of it where you just get all these trolls and terrible people. So when I had all these misogynists talking shit about them, I flew into a rage. Big surprise. It's always there, but I got so fucking mad.
It's always there. It never leaves me.
It's like the Hulk. Like when he's like, I'm always angry, that's my secret. I am the She-Hulk. So I got so mad. And then, because especially, it's one thing to be an asshole, but then it's another thing to be incorrect. You know what I mean?
Okay, yes.
Don't be a stupid asshole, especially not
They
to me.
tend to go hand in hand, though.
I know,
I've been learning.
I know. It's so annoying. And so I was like, okay, so firstly, I want to address these comments because they're very easy to prove wrong. And secondly, I want to address them because I think people don't realize how these people are still out there. So, like, they're just everywhere, right? There's a reason why online abuse towards women went up by 1,400% the day after Trump's election.
Wow.
It's because these people are there. And so I think I'm going to be able to navigate this well with the technology. As we know, my technological abilities are not amazing, but I think I can share my screen so that you can see.
Can we?
I think so.
Fun.
This is new, like I said,
new ground.
Let's see. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, look at me go. And then so this
look,
is
I'm wearing like the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
Whoops. This is what I wear every time.
I'm in the same colors. Oh my, that's freaking hilarious. So I'm gonna play this. Let me know if you can't hear it. But this is the specific video I'm talking about.
And if you look at soccer in America, like women are like absolutely outperforming the men. Yet the men were still getting way more money and investment. So that for me is a really good example of like visually in that sport, women are getting, doing well, getting loads of there's fan support. But underneath that, it's very, very unequal. And I think, so I guess that's the point. And Kristen, I always think back to when you and I delivered the session for our master's students around sexism and working in sport, and the like lovely, really like kind of open-minded males in the room, and I put their hand up and said, but this isn't an issue anymore because women look at women's football and you're like, well, yeah, look at it, it's developing, but it's nowhere near at the same level as the men in terms of support and like TV time and finances and funding and everything else.
So that's the video, right? Seems pretty standard, right? Nothing like this is all well-known information. Insightful, but like well-known, right? Okay. Do you want to hear some of the comments we got? I'm so happy that you're not on our TikTok.
No, don't want to hear. No, thank you.
So one person, man, sorry, I should be clear on that, said, because the viewership is lower, which means lower ticket. I don't know what that means. Which means lower ticket.
It does mean lower ticket, yes.
Comma, winnings and advertising revenues. It's got nothing to do with skill level, although the USA women's team got beaten, I would say. Beat doesn't grammatically make sense, but by under 15 boys teams anyway. And they said teams plural. That's not true. So basically saying like viewership's lower, so they're not going to get as much money. And also like then completely undercutting the skill of the women's team by saying they got beat by some 15-year-olds, right? And so I want to address that one first, because this whole the US women's team got beat by a 15-year-old academy team argument is constantly used to undercut the Olympic women's football team, soccer team, because people don't want to see the women succeeding this much, right? And so this did happen, and they've addressed it multiple times. But what actually happened was they weren't trying to beat this academy team. That was not the point. So essentially what had happened was, and this was ages ago too, what was it, 2016 Olympics? So like nearly a decade ago,
Rio.
something like
Yeah, I
that.
think
Yeah.
so.
So
Yeah.
they've been knocked out of Rio pretty quickly, and that was devastating for them. Their defense just did not work at all. It was absolutely ripped to shreds. So they decided that it would be a good idea to expose as many flaws as possible in their game so they could improve. And speed was the biggest factor. So they wanted to like choose like a really fast team. They had access to this academy team. And so they basically got the fastest academy team they could play against and try out various combinations and do the wrong things to see what happened, like the reasons they got kicked out of Rio, and see how they could like plan to fix it, find the holes that they're trying to fix in the non-Olympic situation. We're not trying to win. So they're trying to like figure out what they're doing wrong to involve to like kind of adjust that, right? And so that information was super valuable to the coach. It's more useful than trying to like just demolish some boys team, right? The whole point was it was an exercise in losing so they could kind of target. That was the whole, they weren't even trying to win. It was like an experiment it was like, give us your best, we'll give you our worst so that we can kind of find the holes. And that's like a very woman way of dealing with things as well. Like, let me give you my worst and try and fix that, instead of I just need to win because to show these 15-year-old boys that our Olympic team is just amazing, right?
And they would say something bad if we beat them anyway. You know what I mean?
Like, that's such a good point. Yeah, that's such a good point. Like it just wouldn't get brought up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. There'd be somebody like making fun of the fact that like they were playing like this 15, like under 15s or whatever they were, like team anyway.
You can't win.
So,
it's just
and it's frustrating when you think about like, I guess when we talk a lot in, I guess, like high performance about how we need to be comfortable failing and exploring kind of, I guess, where those weaknesses are. And I guess it links to like the psychological safety stuff. But now, I mean, you wouldn't be surprised if they were then afraid to do something like this because of the backlash and how they then get viewed as a team, and how that then might have an impact on even things like sponsorship and so on, which is something that's significant. So it's just so frustrating that like people take these stories and twist them to be something negative when actually it's kind of something positive. Do you know what I mean? Like it's them trying to grow, them trying to evolve, and not being afraid to lose against a team that I guess on paper it's like, yeah, we should beat them.
Exactly. And it's like these people, they're not even like in their heads twisting a narrative, because they don't even care enough to look at whether it's true or not. They've fit it into their own patriarchal narrative that's already in their head. It's just like, and it's so, tell me you've never been involved with elite sport without telling me you've never been involved with elite sport, right? It's like, like anyone that's actually involved in elite sport, especially aside from maybe that Welsh rugby team, would know that this is an exercise in losing. So that's one of the comments. There was another comment that said, "No one watches the woman!" Exclamation point. So that was one. And I was just like, what? Like, the woman? Do they mean women's sports? Do they mean a single woman? I'm very confused. I'm not confused. I know what they're trying to say, but come on, at least if you're just stop being an idiot. At least like, come on. And so firstly, I would like to note that as of last year, or we're in 2025 now, as of 2023, 37% of women compared to 48% of men watched sport consistently. So that's not that much of a difference. And if you take into account multiple factors, like there's hardly any visibility of women's sports, women weren't societally allowed to be really big sports fans until more recently, then it makes sense. And it's probably going to be a lot. Like that gap is going to close a lot, like a 10% gap. I mean, not even half of men watch sports consistently, right? Like, so chill out, dude. And so that's going to continue rising as access and visibility kind of continue to rise. Excuse me. And that visibility factor is something that is really important. So as of 2018, only 10% of coverage, sports coverage in the UK was dedicated to women's sport. 10%.
So those
as
panel
of
shows are getting
oh,
all
it's
the
all those panel
airtime.
shows, yeah. I'm not talking about total airtime. I'm talking about sports airtime. So
Okay.
out of
Oh,
100%,
sport airtime.
not total sports. So men's sports
Okay.
have 90% of the sport airtime. Women's have 10%.
Oh.
So there's no sports to watch on the TV because they're not buying the rights to those sports and not playing them on the television. That's obviously increased over the last 7 years. But as of 2022, the average viewing time per person of women's sport increased by 131%. So like the amount of time people are spending watching women's sport has increased over 100%, right? But the airtime still dedicated to women has hardly increased. How crazy is that?
That is mad.
Yeah. I think the fact that I said before that ties into this comment, which was if the women who complained about the pay actually watched the games, then the problem wouldn't exist. So I think that's the one I meant to tie to like 37% of women versus 48% of men watch sport consistently.
Yes.
That's that one.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, they're all related, aren't they? And so, like, it's just complaining that women don't watch sport. Yes, we fucking do, right?
Yeah.
Tell me that you don't have any female friends, right?
Yeah. Oh my
and then
gosh.
the last comment, that this is the one that just made me the most angry and like feeling protective, is only lies coming out of that mouth. Right? Doesn't it just make you feel gross?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah. So that's why I was like, you go. You've got something to say.
I was gonna
could
say
tell.
gross, and then just like scary, right?
Yeah.
How this is. I was gonna say like these comments. I don't know. I was gonna say I suppose do these comments kind of represent the average person's understanding of, representation of like women's sport and like airtime and who's watching it and so on and so on. Like, I do think that there is still like so little awareness about how women's sport is, I guess, equally like valid and equally, yeah,
I think
I guess equally valid.
My perspective would be that yes, this is a reflection of the average person's understanding, because we have this misunderstanding from people who work in sport, right? From our study that we did, down to just seeing people discussing how to coach women on LinkedIn, which I like posted about a week or two ago, because I was seeing all these people talking about how it's different to coach women, and they're not talking about the reasons why we're different. They're just saying women are more people pleasers. Women are just different to coach. Like, are we? Or have we been socialized to be people pleasers because of the society, things like that? That will influence how you're coaching people, but it's not that women are like that, right? So it really bothers me.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think as well, it's frustrating when we think about, I don't know, I think there's like a kind of gif I show sometimes when we do that sexism lecture. I can't remember if you remember, but it's like how now there is technically like a 50-50 split between, men and women who go and participate at the Olympics. And I feel like that is almost people then being like, oh, great, so we've solved it. Like we have just as many like women participating as we do men. But actually it's not just like those numbers which are allowing us to find, I suppose, that kind of equity. Like it is still hard to be a woman in sport.
And just getting to that 50%, a lot of these women will be self-funding. They won't have like
Yes.
sponsorship deals. They will be getting probably a lot of personal meaning and purpose and just like this awesome feeling from being at the Olympics, but it's not gonna give them like a career in terms of beyond sport, right? Where a lot of men, not all the men, right? But the percentage of sponsorship deals for men athletes in the Olympics versus women athletes at the Olympics is astronomical, right? It's not that simple. And it's all marketing. It's all like crafting the reality that we see to say, yep, 50%, 50%, it's, we're good now. When actually, when you look at the problem from like you're looking at the gray area, you're breaking it down. That's really not the case.
Yes.
Which is something we're going to really dig into in this episode. So that's why we decided to do this episode, right? Is because there's that very clear misunderstanding amongst the general population, but also working in sport. And so I did a chapter for Amy and Jen for this book that they have coming out soon about women's stories in sport. And part of one of the chapters was about this. And so I thought I'd start by reading a quote. I'm quoting myself, just mainly because I was too lazy to try and figure out a different way to say it this morning. So I say, even now, there's considerable discourse about the validity of women's sports through topics surrounding women's bodies, the gender pay gap, viewership, and allocated resources, as if a primary reason for the lack of space occupied by women in sport and the slow, in heavy quotes, progression of women's sport was not driven by active exclusion through policy and culture, often giving men's sport a significant head start at really pivotal periods in history, because at the advent of like the television and certain media bits is when sport took off, and that's right around when women's sport was gotten rid of. Because so I think that's like something really important, is it's not just that women's sport isn't popular, it's because it's actively been repressed. So not only were the people in these comments wrong, but there are reasons people think this way and why women's sport is so far behind men's sport. Just like women's rights are behind men's rights, women's like medicine and the knowledge of our bodies is behind because they only started testing on women in the 90s. So it's just like everything, it's just behind. It's quite frustrating.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yes. So I thought I'd start with some facts. I do love a fact. Do you know anything about American basketball?
No.
So last basketball season, so this would have been the 2023-2024 season. So there's the NCAA is the like the college university athletes kind of, that's like that athletic association for universities.
Okay. Yeah.
So in Division 1 is the best division, and it goes through Division 3, which is like where you're not allowed to give sports scholarships and stuff like that. So it's a bit lesser in terms of it won't attract the same kind of athletes because D1 has all this money to offer their athletes, and they make a huge revenue off of their sports. So last season, Caitlin Clark, who just came onto the scene, like just an amazing player, and also her teammates and competitors, absolutely shattered NCAA Division 1 viewership records for women and men. Completely shattered the records because they were so good, especially Caitlin Clark. It was a really interesting season. There was a lot of one-on-one competition between various players, and it's completely shattered the records because for the most part, people aren't as bothered by NCAA as they would be by like the NBA, right? But suddenly people were tuning in to the NCAA to watch Caitlin Clark's crazy like ascension. Then she was drafted to the WNBA, so the Women's National Basketball Association, to the Indiana Fever, and her jersey became the top selling jersey of a professional draft pick of all time, regardless of gender. So of all time. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But, however, the top pick in the NBA averages over $10 million, right? To start with
Okay.
in their initial contract. Can you guess how much Caitlin Clark's salary was for her, like her top, being a top draft pick in the WNBA?
So the top men's was 10 million.
It's over 10 million.
Over 10 million.
It's usually over 10 million, or it averages over 10 million.
Okay. So how much is she getting paid?
Yeah.
Um,
I know I'm not giving you like anything to go. No, you have zero
I'm
context.
like 2.
Million?
Yeah.
$76,000.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I have a thing like people don't need to be making hundreds of millions of dollars playing sports. I have a real ethical opposition to that. But
Yeah.
at the same time, that's $76,000, especially nowadays in America with how expensive it is not that much money for a professional athlete. The top pick. Like it's crazy.
Do you know if that has changed since like she, got like these top picks and things? I don't really know what that
This was
means.
only a year ago. This was only a year ago. She was the top pick.
She was, and this is how much she is getting paid,
Yeah.
even after being like top pick or currently being top pick. This is what she's getting.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
wow.
get this.
Okay, yeah.
So some WNBA athletes have been really good at being outspoken on podcasts and stuff like that. But basically saying like we need to be paid more. Like all over the news when this kind of argument was happening I think it was like around last summer. People were like, they're not LeBron. They're not like they shouldn't be getting that much money. And she's like, we don't want to be paid like LeBron, right? We want what we have earned. So she said, we're not asking to get paid what the men get paid. We're asking to get paid the same percentage of revenue shared. So she says that women in the NBA don't receive any percentage of jersey sales like the men. So they're just getting a base salary and that's it. They're not getting any percentage of revenue share. They're not saying like the NBA is as popular as the WNBA, and they're not saying like even though the WNBA isn't watched as much, we still want to make tens of millions. They're saying no, whatever the revenue of the WNBA is, we would like the same percentage as what the men get of theirs, which I feel is very fair.
Extremely fair, for sure.
Yeah.
And then in a way, there's like, not that it's like incentive, it makes it sound too businessy, but in a sense, there's like then incentive for them to try and promote themselves or to try and, whatever. If there's some kind of like financial gain in it kind of for them. But I think it's frustrating when the reasoning is then like, oh, well, you should just be doing it because it's something that you love and it's something like you're passionate about. And it's like, yes, like, of course there's going to be that, like when you're playing a sport that you've like trained for your whole lives. But you also want it to become a career and something that is sustainable and something. And I suppose you could say like, yes, okay, that much money would be sustainable for somebody to live a good life. But it feels like a bit of a punch in the face if you're then comparing it to what the men are getting, right?
Right. It's that equity, like even equality, without even trying to access equity in this aspect. I mean, firstly, they've dedicated their entire lives and their identities likely to this, right? They're experts in their field, right? You don't see many experts in their field making like that little money, right? It's just like it makes no sense and it's very obvious that people just don't give a shit. Okay. Like I think it's important to note that this is on purpose. It's not just like a coincidence that there's this massive gap between men's and women's sports and how much they're paid because it's across the board for the most part. I mean, I'm sure there's a couple sports, maybe like gymnastics or something where women might make more, but there's also not like professional teams. That's more of like the Olympic. So men have used sport historically to prevent women's broader societal progress. So we touched on this last episode, how it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back for women's progress. And sport is often a mechanism for doing that. Like, remember, we said about bicycle face last week, which I'm sure we could just talk about for ages because it's such a crazy and interesting topic. But I wanted to say, say a quote from a magazine in 1896 that says, "To men, the bicycle in the beginning was merely a new toy. To women, it was a steed upon which they rode into a new world. The bike was how they were able to progress." And obviously then this mysterious women's disease that only happened to women made them not be able to ride these bikes. So, sorry, I really need a drink of water. I'm thirsty. 1 second.
Oh, yeah,
you can
that's
talk if
fine.
you want, or you can just stare at me.
Oh, I'll just stare.
So going to this time period of the early 1900s is when we started to see women being banned from sports because of various things, which I'll get into. But this kind of 1900 to 1930 period was really defined by pushback by men in sport. Administrators, leaders, even medical professionals, as we talked about last episode, saying that a lot of physical and mental reasons for why women were not suitable for sport. So they would say hysteria, which isn't a thing. They said that running or riding a bike or all these things would lead to damaging our reproductive organs. gotta avoid running to keep that uterus safe, because I mean, if you can't deliver a child, what's the point of existing?
What is the point?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And this was the reasoning they used to ban women from basketball in 1899. So they were banned from college level.
What was that? What year was that?
1899.
1899. So they banned them because of this. Yeah, you don't want to damage yourself, basically.
Yeah, it's too much. Women had been playing basketball already for a couple decades and really enjoying it. And I also think, I'll say this after I explain all of this, but just think about what sport offers to groups of people, right? Getting together, talking, sharing your experiences, things like that. So women were banned from college level basketball in 1899, and then some in the US, and some states made it illegal to play basketball in high school as well. So just completely nope, you can't play basketball. And it didn't experience a really big resurgence until the 70s, after women were banned for decades. So how long do you think it's going to take to rectify that damage? Women's basketball wasn't around when think about how men's basketball was around so long and had that time to evolve as a sport. Do you know what I mean? And have that the development of coaching styles and play, and if you see the old videos of basketball when they're throwing it under their arms into the hoop, it's evolved a lot as a sport. And so it's just of course, women's basketball will be behind, and they're not gonna. And the other thing is they weren't even really around when people started investing in sport because of the new media coverage, like TV and stuff like that, television. So they wouldn't have the money to invest in the sport, things like that. Similarly, in the UK, by 1921, there were about 150 women's football, so soccer clubs. Some of these matches drew 45,000 spectators. And at the time, right now, Old Trafford, I think for United is 70. So think about in the 20s, you've got half of Old Trafford filled, because there weren't going to be stadiums as big as we have now either. So they were fully packed stadiums, lines outside, men and women watching. And they were beating the men in viewership at this point. So kind of as a result of men's resentment, really, of the popularity of the women's game, women were banned from playing football from 1921 to 1970. Till 1970, they were banned from the game. Again, right along that time, and that advertising time in the 50s and 60s leading into the 70s, where you're getting all this money into sport, men's sport, they're
Yeah.
not even
Yeah.
existing. It's illegal.
Ah, I'd never thought about it like that in terms of the kind of media kind of rise around that time and how women are then basically just excluded from it.
Mm-hmm. Think about media in the 50s and 60s and early 70s. It's very much centered about that, around that housewife, family person that we
Yeah.
discussed last episode. It's very like, you've got this dress on, you've got this weird, probably like jello encased, like weird 50s food that you've done
Yeah.
because you've had a lobotomy or you're on like on
Oh yeah, yeah.
tranquilizer drugs, like
Classic, yes.
classic, yeah.
But it's
And
also mad, like I don't think I realized how good like the spectatorship was then, like before they banned it. Like I think
Mhm.
I always just like assumed like, well, they must have just banned it because it didn't really, maybe it didn't really make that much difference anyway. But
Mhm.
that is a surprising fact to me, in that the viewership, the spectatorship was really strong,
Mhm.
and then that's just been cut. Like that makes it even more like horrific that they've just decided off some whim that this is something that women now can't do. Like it's something that was
Mhm.
established. Do you know what I mean? Like it was well established. They were successful and they've just taken that away.
Like you said, it's a whim. The whims of men are why women are like constantly facing backlash. It's
Mm.
because they're just a lot, so many, 'cause in a patriarchal society, it's threatening that power, right? Women showing that they're not some delicate little flowers in by playing sports, like contact sports like basketball and football slash soccer, but and then they're going to use women's bodies against them by saying, oh, even despite decades of you doing this, actually this isn't good for your baby making like prospects, so we're going to fully ban you from doing it. But the other point I wanted to make, and I think I read another chapter about this somewhere, is
Somewhere. One of my
somewhere.
many chapters.
I was trying to remember if it was in this book or a different book. Um, and is think about how novel and amazing it is for women, especially 100 odd years ago, to be able to go into groups of other women and just communicate and talk about what's happening, what's going on in their lives, what's positive, what's negative. And there's so much repression of women's community, active repression. And that was not just like, oh, women are competing in sport, they're competing with men's sport, we don't want that, go away. It's also women are building community, and that's a threat to patriarchy. Let's get rid of it. And so that's why, from my point of view, and other scholars' points of view, sport is such a vehicle for preventing women's progress. And we still see it today, like women working in sport like we do, is still, sport is still largely occupied by men, right? We're not actively excluded by being banned, but we're excluded through, where am I? Oh yeah, there I am.
I'm here.
We're actively excluded through sexism and harassment at various levels, right?
Mm.
So it's just really frustrating. Like in this time, we have a less conspicuous version of exclusion, but now we're dealing with sexism and things like that. But
Yeah.
I think, sorry, what I was trying to say was every surge forward in demonstrating women's competence and right to autonomy, in whether that's be sport or society, has resulted in this backlash we discussed last episode, especially in professional and recreational sport. And a big thing that I always try to tie into my arguments is that sport, I think his name is Anderson, wrote about how sport was designed for men to demonstrate their kind of reserved right, and heavy quotes, to power through their kind of toughness and their, I don't know, what we think of as toughness, masculine toughness, through their kind of like hyper masculine traits. And so that's how sport is used as a tool to demonstrate men's right to power, essentially.
And what you were saying before around how it's like, it's not like women are actively banned. It's not like, it's almost like in a way, like the barriers have become so much more like covert in a sense. Like you don't see them as clearly, which
Mm,
is though like yes, like it's a good thing that we don't have these really like overt barriers anymore where we're like banned from stuff and literally not allowed to participate or compete. But sometimes it's more scary with these like covert ones that we can't see. And then I think
mm,
that's where we get a lot of these, you know, like the comments that we were talking about earlier. Like you see people having that sort of understanding of what's going on because it's like, well, all of the barriers have been taken away. Like women are allowed to do what they want, like they can compete as much as they want. But there's not, I think, like you mentioned before, like digging underneath that and
mm-hmm,
kind of understanding, I guess, yeah, what those kind of barriers still are to progression.
mm-hmm. I feel like those barriers and kind of general exclusion are so ingrained in the system, whether we're talking about sport or society, that people don't think outside of that. It's so easy to gaslight other people and yourself because it's just accepted an accepted reality because it's presented to
Mm.
you this way your entire life. And you're
Yes.
always taught to see, well, look how far we've come. Like, great, I will
Mm.
totally acknowledge how far we've come. That's great. However, look at where we are now. We can't even post a video on the internet without men deciding to tell us to shut up, right? And especially women existing in sport, which has actively been crafted for men to
Mm.
demonstrate their right to power over the last 100 years.
Mm.
It's bad, right? Because,
Mm.
like, we had that this desire of maintaining that patriarchal structure. It's just like they use sport to just put women back in their place by employing those sexist assumptions about women's capacities. So, like in the late 1800s, early 1900s, we had the bicycle phase with the suffragette movement. We had the active banning of women from sport. Now in 2000s, we have sexism, but it's like you said, it's so built into the system. It's just like, what do you do? We get such pushback from a lot of our work that is it sometimes it's well meaning, like Amy said in the video I shared. Like the men in the class will say, well, it's not really an issue anymore. Women's Look how well women's football is doing. The Women's World Cup was so viewed. Like, yes, but do you know how hard it was to get there? Did you see the sexual assault happen on the biggest screen in the world at that
Yeah.
Women's World Cup?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very
Mm.
frustrating.
It is, yeah. And I think this is where it's almost like, I think sometimes this is where I feel as well, like if I'm having conversations about these sorts of things, that I need to have all of these like facts and figures because sometimes it can be hard to like fight your position
Mm-hmm.
with kind of topics like this without someone just throwing something that they think is like common sense, do you know what, like back to you. And it's like, well, no,
Mm-hmm.
actually, because you're not looking beneath the surface of what's happening. And
Mm-hmm.
then there's like that extra work that we need to do in making sure that we can construct these arguments which are really, really solid and like unbreakable. And I often worry I'm just stood there like, shit, like I don't know how to argue back to you, but I know you're wrong, but I'm not
Yeah.
going to be able to give you a good enough answer that's going to change your mind. And I find that really frustrating.
I think that is such an important point because, and this there's that burden on the
Hmm.
person that is being oppressed is probably a very large word in this. Like, we're oppressed by a system, right? But that person who is trying to fight upward for that upward mobility, right? The burden is placed on that person who's already struggling to do that work, right? And it just makes you even more tired. There's a reason that women are so tired. I mean, a lot of this research comes from how the burden is often placed on Black people to fight racism and educate, when really it should be us as white people doing the work to research it and take that responsibility and become better people, right? It's the same thing happens with women, is like the burden's on us to explain how either they're wrong, why they're wrong, why should they listen to us, right? To explain that we're human beings and not just baby receptacles. We just like, if we want to pick up a basketball,
Uh,
like, I know.
receptacles seems like such a horrible word.
No.
Receptacles.
Yeah, especially when you say it that way. Yeah.
That probably wasn't what I was going to take from what you said.
No, I like it though. Stickers. But yeah, that's a good point because like how do you then firstly change things when you're constantly tired from constantly having this burden put on you? And then is it kind of, I don't know, going along with that system if you actually do put in the effort every single time to change that person's mind? Where do you stand on that?
What, in terms of how much effort do I put in to change
Yeah.
somebody's mind? Like, is it my job almost to change
Yeah,
somebody's
it's
views?
because I struggle with this a lot, obviously, with this being my area and special interest,
Mm-hmm.
um, and having a very high justice sensitivity. I always feel the need to like do this change and like educate that person and be like, no, you're wrong because of XYZ. Because
Mm.
I have this misconception that if I present somebody with facts that they're gonna be like, oh, okay, and change their
Yes.
mind. That
Oh,
definitely
that's
does
what
not
I always
happen.
think too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm,
But then I
yeah.
go, well, philosophically, why is it on me? I shouldn't. I'm like engaging with the system by putting this burden on myself. And I'm like, it's
Mm.
like a constant back and forth.
I mean, I I guess it would be less stressful, right? If we said, you know what, that's not my thing to deal with, and we
Hmm.
stood back from it. But I don't think I'd be able to live with myself if I didn't like
Yeah.
challenge people on these things, or if I'm not challenging, at least like asking questions and or almost like trying to understand or trying
Mm.
to like understand where their understanding comes from. So is it from a space of actually they've done loads of research on this and they know loads of things, or actually are they just chatting a load of like shit? And do you know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yeah.
So I think I feel the need to like understand why people, say things that might be sexist. Like, do they understand that that is sexist in the first
Hmm.
place? And if they don't understand, then yeah, I'm gonna tell them. Like, do you know that is something like that's sexist? And maybe I'm not trying to like, you know, get them to communicate differently or get them to stop being sexist, but maybe just to get them to think twice about something, even if it's just in that 30 seconds. But
Yeah.
I guess I recognize that that isn't going to like change a bigger picture. But it's
Hmm.
probably in a sense like selfish in a way because I don't think I'd be able to live with myself if I just ignored comments like that. I'd always be like,
Yeah.
I should have said this or I should have said that. Or,
Hmm.
yeah, why didn't I stand up for like that group of people, you know?
Yeah. And I think I agree totally with that. It's like I can't let it go. Like
Yeah.
it would be difficult to let it go. Like last night when that man kept calling me and my friend girls, and I was like, "Are we girls though?" Like that's
Yeah.
like, and you could see him like not really able to figure out what was wrong with what he was saying, right?
Yeah.
But maybe
Yeah.
next time he'll think when he sees a full grown ass woman, think
Hmm.
twice about calling them a girl,
Yeah.
right? Ugh.
Totally. And I think sometimes things like that, when it's like a kind of, I guess we could say it's like a semantic thing. I feel like often people think I'm being really pedantic. And I'm like,
Hmm.
no, but it has meaning. Like the words that you use have meaning and like have power. And like
Absolutely.
using, like saying girls instead is like arguably minimizing. Like I talked to Matt about this and he's like, yeah, but I'll call like the guys like boys. So should I not
Hmm.
be calling them boys? And I'm like, what is it good? It's
Well,
like,
there's no power dynamic there. There's no societal
yeah,
structure in place that makes it condescending, right?
yeah,
It's like you can say that to your, and just like how a group of women friends say, I'm going to go hang with the girls, right? That's fine. I wouldn't say that. I would always just say, I'm going to, well, I don't usually have groups of people that I hang out
yeah.
with.
No, like,
I gotta go hang
who are
out
we
with Laura.
kidding?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go hang with my one friend, and then another day I'll hang out with another friend, but it's not gonna be
yeah.
at the same time. But I think either way, I wouldn't use like that kind of vernacular. I don't know if that's just me. I would just be like, I gotta go hang with my friends,
Yeah.
But not like, but you might say like, if I have a girls trip or something like that, but that you're saying that about your own group is fine. I wouldn't call a group of guys boys. Like, that's weird and it seems condescending. But it's
that is
even
true. Isn't it?
yeah.
Like, you're gonna go hang out with the boys? Like, I just wouldn't say that.
Oh, you're gonna go hang out with your boys?
How nice.
Like, and it gets even more condescending when it's from the group that in the structure that you are existing in says it. Like, it's literally boys and girls is children, right?
Yeah.
You're equating them to having like the brains of children. Literally, I think it was Matt Walsh, I don't know if you saw my post on this, said last week or 2 weeks ago, women have the minds of a child and they shouldn't be involved in politics. It's literally the argument that was from frickin' 100 years ago when people were saying women, some like right wing, like he's not like a politician, but he's an influencer. But like he sits there, gross. It's like women have like literally said it, and the guy was like, of course they do. Like what? Yeah, it said a woman is like. Oh,
what
that's
the
what
hell?
it said. It said a woman is like a child. Yeah, and
I just don't understand. Like,
no,
why would anybody say that?
because they're dicks. Because they're just
mad.
Because they have a lot to gain by subjugating women. They have a lot to gain. Patriarchy and capitalism have a lot to gain by taking women out of the picture. But unfortunately, the world has a lot to lose by doing that. Not just individual women, but everything works better when you've got all the genders just existing and adding, to the table. It's just really frustrating.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Put me in a room with that person for 1 second.
I would pay to see that. Oh my gosh, maybe that's what we need to do. Get people like that on the podcast. Oh my gosh, no, I think it would get a bit dangerous actually.
That'd be hilarious. I think you would just become a moderator. You would have to take some like you have to like take some lessons in how to like diffuse like a hostage situation.
Gosh. Yeah, exactly. But like, how's everyone feeling? You all okay?
I would probably have a great time, actually. I think they would probably leave not feeling so great. Because they don't base anything off of facts. They don't live in reality.
Yeah.
It's so dumb.
It would be easy to pull apart.
Yeah, definitely. This makes me kind of wonder, like, if anyone is interested to hear our work on sexism in sport. Because, like, discussing a little bit the history of it, we've kind of gotten to where like we are in modern times with women experiencing exclusion from sport through sexism. So in our paper, we talk about how this happens from the outside at interpersonal levels. So that's between people. So like active sexism through like banter and stuff like that, or like the broader organizational level, like there's no pathways for support when they're experiencing negative things. There's no facilities for women. Like my first club I worked at didn't have a women's bathroom. Obviously, I'm not allowed in the men's bathroom, so I had to use like the extra disabled toilet that all the boys would just use to poop in, and it was clogged half the time. So I would have to drive off the freaking facility to use the petrol station toilet every time I needed to use the toilet. It was horrible. Ooh. And then we also talk about the more social, broader cultural level of exclusion that influences it as well. So if you guys want to hear about that, let us know and we'll talk about it. Do you have anything that like pops into your head that like is relevant from our paper or anything else?
Well, I was just going to say how it links into the episode we did on this socio-ecological model, sorry. Right? We did that. Yes.
Yeah, I don't think that was a fever dream. I'm pretty sure we did it.
I'm pretty sure that happened, yes. So, yeah, how it kind of links into that. So that was very much how we were. Yeah, that was kind of the framework we used to analyze and to understand these women's experiences. So, yeah.
We like to add the nuance. And that's why I think we struggle so much when people don't have this nuance, is you and I are looking at it most of the time from that individual influences. How are these interpersonal? How is this broader social? How have even just like a simple law influenced how this individual's person, oh my God. I'm so happy it's Friday.
I keep forgetting it's Friday. It's great.
Oh, I'm so excited. This individual person's experience are the words I'm trying to say.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah. So if you want to hear about it, let us know. If not, we're probably going to still talk about it.
We'll do it anyway. Yeah. So cool. Should we go into reflections?
Yes. Let's do it.
I'm trying to think. So I haven't written any reflections down yet, but I suppose on reflection of kind of what we've spoken about, I think it's for me, like, I guess just interesting. I suppose again, we're challenging, I guess, some of these assumptions about women's sport. And I think that it's useful to almost not check our knowledge, but I suppose try and like deepen it and really understand kind of what are the facts beneath the things that we might be sharing, or what are the facts that aren't beneath some of the things that we hear other people are sharing. And I suppose with like the theme of the podcast, almost we're always kind of asking like, but why? And I guess it's that, right? It is, if we hear something, if we see something online, checking it. And I think that we reflected on something kind of similar when we spoke with Jen and Amy. So what are those things that we can kind of question and ask for a bit more facts kind of beneath that, rather than just taking things at face value? I think it's just a reminder of that.
I love that. It's like, what can you approach with more nuance? What can you explore more?
Yes.
What can you be curious about? And I think that's a really good thing to apply for, like, if you're looking at deconstructing why people have certain rights or why there's certain barriers, but I think more broadly as well. I love that as a reflection. But specifically for this episode, explore the nuance on women's rights, because that's what we want you to do.
Yes.
For this.
That's the one.
That's the one. For selfishly, for how we want the world to be better.
Yeah.
So thanks everyone for listening. As usual, we probably have more questions than answers, but we enjoyed exploring how women are excluded from sport to prevent broader progress. So did this leave you with any questions? Please comment and let us know. We'd love to know if you have any topics you'd like to explore, so get in touch. Be sure to like, follow, or engage however your platform allows, and tell your friends or friend based off of our conversation before.
Your individual friends.
Your individual friend. You can tell them all separately or in a group, whatever works for you. You can find us on various social media platforms. The link is in the bio of our But Why Instagram page and in the show notes. And remember, the first step to understanding is asking, but why?
Yeah.